Anxiety is the Enemy. 29 Techniques to Combat Overthinking, Stress, Panic, and Pressure. Written by Nick Trenton, narrated by Russell Newton. The thing about seeing it in visualization is that you're already an expert at it. When you stress and ruminate and worry, visualization is exactly what you're doing. You are creating distressing mental pictures that then cause an adverse reaction in your body. So why not use this ability your brain already possesses and put it to better use? In this chapter, we're looking at scientifically proven ways to use the power of your imagination to calm anxiety, gain psychological distance, and learn to exteriorize your experience. 20. Guided Imagery. Guided imagery is a straightforward stress management tool that helps you relax. You simply imagine in vivid detail peaceful settings or situations. Right now, try to think of a super sour lemon in great detail. Imagine yourself biting into one. Do this for long enough and you'll start to salivate. It's the same with guided imagery. When it comes to stress and relaxation, your brain cannot tell the difference between imagined and real. So when you imagine peaceful things, your body responds physically and releases feel-good hormones. This is why guided imagery has been associated with reduced stress and better relaxation. A study published in 2014 took women suffering from fibromyalgia and put them into two groups. One group did guided imagery exercises every day for 10 weeks, while the other group didn't. At the end of the 10-week period, the women who did the guided imagery reported significant drops in their pain, stress, fatigue, and depression levels. Another study did something similar, but compared the effects of guided imagery with those of clinical massage. The participants were patients in a progressive care unit. The results? 30 minutes of guided imagery had the same effect on the participants as 15 minutes of therapeutic massage. Guided imagery has also been shown to reduce pain, improve sleep quality, relieve fatigue, and improve depression. Practicing guided imagery is easy, and there are so many ways to do it. You can try it when you wake up, before you sleep, or as part of a yoga practice or meditation session. You can use an audio recording or app to help you, make your own recording, or be creative and guide yourself. Take a look at YouTube or download one of the countless apps now available. The general process goes as follows. Sit somewhere quiet and get comfortable, close your eyes, and relax your breathing. You can start with any breathing exercise you like or do a little stretching to loosen your muscles. Now, in your mind's eye, take the time to imagine a peaceful, relaxing place. Your imagination is the limit. You could visualize an epic and serene mountain range in the snow, a heavenly garden with a palace made of crystal at its center, or a cozy library with a warm, crackling fire in the corner. You could also think of a place from your memory. Now, don't rush. In as vivid detail as possible, imagine all the elements of this scene using all 5 senses. The smell of the sea breeze, the sound of children laughing, the sight of sunlight glittering through the tops of the trees. Don't forget to imagine how you feel in this place too. What are you wearing? What are you doing and thinking? How you interact with this scene is up to you. You can walk through a path you create in your imagination, or simply imagine yourself at the center of a tranquil picture and notice what comes and goes. Some people imagine an enormous healing pool with a stone staircase that lowers you step by step into the magical water. Others imagine a stately museum that they browse through room by room. As you sink into your visualization, keep your breathing slow and regular, and let go of any ideas of what you should be doing. Your only goal is to indulge in the relaxation you're creating for yourself. When you're done, take a deep breath, stretch, and open your eyes. As you can see, There's plenty of leeway for you to make guided imagery your own. It's a good idea, though, to make sure you won't be disturbed, i.e., turn your phone to silent, and wear comfy clothing. If imagining scenes is difficult at first, don't worry. You'll get better with practice. You may find it helpful to first study images and photographs of gorgeous locations, then close your eyes and imagine you're really there. What else can you see when you explore just outside the frame? You can use audio recordings and prompts at first, but you may find you're able to go deeper once you take your time and create your own mental image. One great thing to do is create a mental sanctuary that you can repeatedly return to. In a way, this place acts like a mental anchor, as we explored earlier. Your body and mind come to associate this place with deep relaxation. Every time you visit, you can add another little detail. Why not combine mantras with your imagery? This way, even if you don't have time to go into full visualization session, you can evoke some of the associated emotions just by reciting your mantra. For example, in a stressful moment during the day, you can close your eyes, take a deep breath, and say, "Cool, wet grass," to remind you of your inner safe space. It's amazing how suggestible the brain can be, and how quickly you can change your emotional state. 21. Metaphorize your anxiety. One way to improve your relationship with anxiety is through metaphors. When we use metaphors, we gain psychological distance between us and what's bothering us. We become observers of our feelings rather than slaves to them. Your brain really is an amazing organ, and with a little prompting, you can use it to completely reshape your experience and the relationship you have with your anxiety. In fact, the idea of having a relationship with anxiety is itself a metaphor. It's a metaphor that helps you see anxiety as something that can be understood and collaborated with. Metaphors can help us see new perspectives. Here's a few more useful ones. Clouds in the sky. The Buddhist conception of anxiety, and all sensation and thought, is that they're like clouds moving across the sky. We are the sky, blue, depthless, eternal, but the weather's always changing. It comes, it goes. Anxiety is like this. It comes and it goes. When we explore this metaphor, we start to see anxiety not as a problem to solve, but as something as harmless and fleeting as passing clouds. Do you get angry at clouds? Do you fight against them or twist yourself into a knot figuring out how to solve them? They don't need to be solved. They come and then they go. New perspective. Even if right now you are anxious, it doesn't mean you always will be. You can embrace what is. You don't have to fight with it. Waves in the ocean. Founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, John Kabat-Zinn once said, "You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf." New perspective. We can't control anxiety, but we can roll with it. We are able to cope with anything that comes our way. Trains on a platform. You are the station, and thoughts arrive as trains, each one taking you to a different destination. There are a lot of trains, and the chaos and noise can be overwhelming, but remember, you only have to board one at a time, and you can choose which train to hop on. New perspective. Just because a thought is there doesn't mean I have to board it and follow it where it goes. I can watch it come and leave the station without me on it. A grumpy 2-year-old. Your anxiety isn't a fearsome demon set out to torture you for all eternity. It's just an annoying but completely manageable 2-year-old who will calm down eventually. You can't ignore a tantrum, but you know that getting upset won't fix anything. Just talk kindly and patiently with the 2-year-old and wait for the drama to pass. Forgive the anxiety. It's just afraid and overwhelmed. It's doing its best. Whenever your brain starts getting carried away with what-if thoughts, Understand that you're occupying a particular perspective. Change that perspective a little, and things won't seem as threatening. You could imagine your anxiety as a tornado, crazy on the inside, but relatively calm if you step just out of the center, or a box of worries that you can open at will, or store away somewhere safe when you're tired of worrying. You could imagine that you have a soul bank account filled with life units, and every time you worry, you spend 1 unit of life that you could have spent on something that could make you happy instead. Whichever metaphor you go with, it should be something that really speaks to you in a meaningful way. When you notice yourself drifting off into a sea of anxiety, call up the image of waves or ripples in a pond. When you notice that critical and negative self-talk dominates your thoughts, imagine a little dial that you can turn to lower the volume so you can hear the rest of life. Try the leaves on a stream exercise. One potent visualization or metaphor exercise is called leaves on a stream. This is a cognitive diffusion technique that's used in ACT, Action Commitment Therapy, and is designed to help you get distance from uncomfortable or overwhelming feelings. The shift in perspective is similar to the one we achieve when we metaphorize our anxiety. We realize, I am having thoughts, but I am not my thoughts. Here's how to do this simple practice. First, sit comfortably somewhere you won't be disturbed, breathing deeply. You know the drill. Next, picture yourself sitting beside a tranquil, flowing stream. In this stream are some fallen leaves peacefully floating by. As a thought pops into your mind, see it there, pick it up, and place it gently onto a passing leaf. Watch it float by out of your field of vision as the stream flows on. Do this with all your thoughts, stressful, neutral, blissful. Put them all on the leaves and watch them go. Now, you're not trying to dispose of thoughts or get rid of them. You're not rushing the stream along or trying to slow it. If you have a thought like, this stream exercise is dumb, then simply pick that up too and put it on a leaf. If you think, I'm really doing well with this, then, you guessed it, put it on a leaf too. Easy. If your mind wanders and you get sidetracked, it's no big deal. Just come back to your task with the leaves and carry on without admonishing yourself or feeling bad. 22. Talk about yourself in third person. Why does talking to other people about our worries make us feel better? Even if the problem isn't solved, we still feel some relief. What helps may simply be the fact that talking about our problems is a way to externalize and abstract our worry, putting some distance between it and ourselves. The great thing is, though, that you don't have to literally talk to a friend to experience these benefits. If you can learn to talk about yourself in third person, you can still achieve that sense of distance and objectivity. This is yet another way we can switch perspective and gain some relief from rumination and worry. What happens when you switch your point of view and think of yourself as a friend would think of you? What would happen if you spoke to yourself as if you were speaking to someone you knew, who had your name and all your problems, and who was asking you for help and advice? A study published in 2017 in Scientific Reports by Professor of Psychology Jason Moser and his colleagues asked these very questions. The researchers found that talking about yourself as though you were someone else can help you relieve strong negative emotions. All you have to do is stop using I statements and instead use he, she, or you. So instead of saying, I'm having a panic attack, you say, she's having a panic attack, or Anna is having a panic attack. It doesn't seem like that big of a deal, but Moser's research shows that when people do this, they self-report lower levels of anxiety. Again, we see the power of psychological distance. By using your own name, and possibly also second-person pronouns, it creates this little separation from the self. It makes you think about your feelings and thoughts like you're looking at somebody else's experience, says Moser. One experiment went like this. Participants looked at stock images and videos from upsetting news stories, then were asked to think about what they saw, first using the first-person point of view, I was saddened, and then using third person, Jay thought this was sad. Simply by using their own names to talk about themselves, the participants showed more activity in the parts of the brain associated with emotional regulation. The emotion is still there, of course. It's just not as close. What's more, using third person takes no more effort than using first person, so it's a great tool to use on the spot when you're feeling overwhelmed. Imagine you've just heard some very stressful news. A family member's had a serious car accident and is in the hospital, and you've had a panicky phone call from your mother. Your head suddenly explodes into dozens of different thoughts, and you're instantly overwhelmed. You know you should probably ask your boss if you can take some time off work so you can head over to the ER and do what you can, but you notice yourself quickly getting strung out as you start to panic too. What if I'm so stressed that I have a car accident on the way over? What if I get there too late and everyone is disappointed in me? What if my boss gets unhappy about me taking time off? What am I going to do? Instead, ask yourself, what is Michael going to do? Can you instantly see how this takes so much of the panic out of the equation? It's as though you're looking at a movie of yourself from the outside in. Suddenly, the stakes aren't as high. You can see a solution or a way forward. Psychology professor Ethan Kross, who's also director at the Emotion and Self-Control Lab, conducted a similar experiment. He asked participants to think about upsetting memories from the past, but to do so using third-person language. While they did this, their brain activity was examined using fMRI. They showed reduced activity in the parts of the brain we know are connected to the experience of pain. In other words, Kross found evidence that talking about painful memories in the third person reduces how painful they feel. What's really exciting here is that third-person self-talk may constitute a relatively effortless form of emotion regulation. If this ends up being true, we won't know until more research is done. There are lots of important implications these findings have for our basic understanding of how self-control works and for how to help people control their emotions in daily life, Kross said. We don't have to wait for further research to be done, however, to get some benefit from making small tweaks to our language. Of course, you don't have to speak like this permanently. Rather, use the third-person trick to diffuse especially stressful moments and take the edge off. You only need to do it long enough to gain some distance. Just momentarily take on a different perspective and see if that releases some of the tension. From there, you can take action or choose to let your worry go. 23. Role-playing. You're probably familiar with role-playing in general, but did you know that role-playing is a useful tool when it comes to managing anxiety? You can use role-play to rehearse and prepare for difficult conversations or situations. When you role-play, you're exploring potential ways of behaving, finding new approaches and perspectives, and accessing new insights, all while staying in control. Role-playing can also be combined with many of the other approaches we've looked at, like naming how you feel, gaining distance by using third-person language, and being more self-aware. How can we use role-play to help with stress and tension? First, identify a situation that's causing some anxiety for you. Let's say you're ruminating over a difficult conversation you need to have with a family member. Now, instead of endlessly turning the problem over in your head and causing stress, try to make the issue concrete. Play out the possible conversation and see what happens. Maybe you enlist the help of a trusted friend or even a therapist. You sit together and try to make the situation feel as real as possible. Assign the roles you'll each play. For example, if you wanted to clarify your thoughts and squash nervousness, you could play yourself, and they could play your family member. Then you could practice the conversation. If you reverse this order, however, you might see different sides to the story and gain fresh insight and empathy into how the family member might be feeling. Act out the conversation. Notice any anxiety or nerves. Notice how you feel afterward. Notice if anything changes after you start talking and once the conversation is finished. Is there some aspect of the issue you hadn't considered before? Even though role-playing this way can feel awkward to start with, it's actually a brilliant way to turbocharge your communication skills. There are many ways to use role-playing when it comes to overthinking and rumination. You could rehearse a job interview. You could practice staying calm and focused during conversations where there may be some conflict to resolve. For example, during a meeting with an angry client. You could rehearse a performance, whether that's literally on a stage or a presentation at work, a wedding speech, or a first date. Being prepared in advance will help you feel confident in yourself. You could use role-playing to help you better understand a social situation, testing out possible outcomes, and seeing how you'll react. Role-playing can boost empathy and help you get into other people's heads. You could use role-play to desensitize yourself to fears and phobias. For example, those with social anxiety can practice small talk and introducing themselves, even rewinding and trying different tactics to get a feel for it in a safe and low-stakes way. Often, anxiety grows in the face of the unknown, but when you role-play, you're actively grappling with that unknown. You take your fears and worries and put them outside your head where you can work on them productively. You can take the stress-inducing what-if statements and literally try them out. When you're anxious, your brain believes that something is more dangerous and threatening than it is, but with role play, you can prove to yourself that the situation is actually manageable. Scared of monsters under the bed? Well, go with a friend and see for yourself if there's anything there. One way to approach role-playing is to start with the fear or threat. What scares or overwhelms you? Maybe you say germs or busy social situations. Next, think of your current behavior and attitude, then imagine a new behavior or mindset that you'd like to practice. For example, you'd like to be more comfortable and relaxed around meeting new people at parties. Now, think of ways to recreate this threatening situation. With a therapist or friend, pick one who's good at acting, run through some potentially stressful situations. Maybe you most hate those first few moments when you meet someone new and you're struggling to think of what to say. So practice that over and over. Have the other person pretend to be a stranger and meet them, trying out this new behavior you want to learn. Don't worry about making mistakes. In fact, messing things up and seeing that it's not the end of the world is all a part of it. Think of it as teaching yourself that the threat is not a threat after all. Gradually dial up the intensity. Once you're feeling confident in small talk from a cold start, see what it's like to talk to someone who's actively rude or uninterested. You may find that with enough practice, you actually start enjoying yourself. If you can start to see it all as a game, you know that the role-playing is working. Naturally, not every anxiety or worry is going to translate into a role-play exercise. And let's be honest, many of us won't have someone we can practice with, but that doesn't mean you can't still benefit from this approach. Simply try mentally rehearsing a certain situation. Walk your brain step by step through a threatening scenario and practice what you say, what you feel, what you do, and what you think. If you like, you can mix things up too. Try to mentally rehearse the roles of other people in a scenario and see if that perspective shift shines new light on the problem. Or get abstract and role play with your anxiety itself. Imagine it's sitting in a chair in front of you and literally talk to it. Anxiety, What are you trying to achieve here? What are you worried about? Make friends and try to come to a compromise. Sounds cheesy, but when you take the role of your own ultra-wise mentor or therapist, you'd be surprised at what you're capable of. 24. Have an alter ego. Kids who were instructed to imagine that they were Batman ended up having greater perseverance in a difficult task than kids who didn't. That's the finding of a fascinating 2016 study conducted by White et al. At the University of Minnesota. Coining this phenomenon, the Batman effect, the researchers noted that merely pretending you're someone who is brave, capable, and strong can actually make you perform better. The idea is that if you can take on the perspective of someone who is stronger and more proficient than yourself, then you literally allow yourself to reflect on a challenge in an entirely different way. Again, we see the power of creating psychological distance. If you can imagine how a person other than you would respond in a situation, you give yourself access to that same response. In the study, the researchers asked kids who were 4 to 6 years old to do a task for 10 minutes. They were also offered the chance to break up this task with an appealing video game. The kids who were told to simulate a strong role model actually ended up working harder and longer on the task than other kids. In this experiment, the other kids were told to take a third-person perspective. Johnny is trying to figure out this puzzle, or an ordinary first-person perspective. The study showed us that a mental role model could help children with self-discipline, focus, and perseverance, but it can also help adults emulate other characteristics they're trying to develop. Many famous musicians and performers have such an alter ego. Even if they have stage fright and low self-confidence, their alter ego doesn't. When on stage, they do what their alter ego would do. Beyoncé is said to use her alter ego, called Sasha, to help her be what she wants to be on stage. If we think of anxiety as a pattern of thought and behavior, we can think of alter egos as a way to try on a completely different pattern. It's difficult to step out of your own character at times, but it's easy to imagine another character. Think about a person who's relaxed, confident, and easygoing. Imagine what a strong, self-assured, and in-control person thinks, says, and does. They may be a real person, a fictional character, or an imaginary person of your own creation. The next time you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed, set your own ego aside for a moment and look at the situation from your alter ego's perspective. Do you remember the "What Would Jesus Do" bangles that were popular in the 90s? The same principle applies. Granted, you might not always feel up to being as brave or relaxed as your alter ego, but the point is to at least entertain that perspective. The more you identify with that alter ego, the more you close the gap between how you are now and how you'd like to be. Let's recap some simple steps to unlocking the Batman effect for yourself. 1. Think of something in yourself you'd like to work on. For example, your pessimistic self-talk or tendency to catastrophize. 2. Now invert this. What does the opposite look like? You might decide it's a person who consistently and cheerfully assumes the best and always sees the silver lining. 3. Now construct an alter ego who possesses this characteristic in buckets. They could have other characteristics too, or you might like to have a different alter ego for each characteristic. You could flesh them out by giving them a name, an appearance, and so on. Have fun with it. Maybe you're socially anxious, and your confident and popular alter ego is called Catherine the Great. 4. Next time you're facing any challenge or obstacle, ask what your alter ego would do. What would they feel in this situation? Really dwell in their perspective. Then, do what they do. Here's how it might look. Let's say you're someone who constantly overthinks things. You decide you'd like to tackle your tendency to stew over minor details and make yourself stressed. You turn this tendency upside down and imagine an alter ego who is happy-go-lucky, calm, confident, and doesn't take things too seriously. This alter ego is a blend of someone you once knew and admired, a fictional character you read about in a book, and someone entirely made up. You call this person Eddie because he's a bit like Eddie Murphy, and flesh out how he looks and acts. He's always smiling, and he likes to go with the flow, have fun, and see what happens. One day, you're planning a vacation and you notice your overthinking, stressed-out self appearing. You stop and think, what would Eddie do? Actually, Eddie would laugh at all this planning. Why so serious? Half the fun is going and figuring out what you want to do on the fly, right? Live life. Be a little spontaneous. Through Eddie's eyes, your 9-page-long Excel itinerary looks a little silly. You laugh at yourself, and when you next think about your upcoming vacation, you speak in his voice as you tell yourself, I don't know what we're doing when we get there, but it'll be fun finding out. Summary. The imagination is a powerful thing and can be put to use to help combat anxiety and quell overthinking. Guided imagery, for example, is a great way to imagine a peaceful scenario in enough detail that our body responds by relaxing. Another effective stress management technique is to use metaphors to help you alter your relationship to anxiety and think of it in a different way. You could imagine that stress is like clouds passing by in the sky, passing trains, or a restless toddler. You can also gain this psychological distance by talking about yourself and your anxiety in the third person. For example, David is worried about this when talking about yourself. Role-play exercises are another way to use the power of visualizing. Literally act out and rehearse anxiety-provoking scenarios with a friend or therapist, or try to practice situations in your mind to desensitize you and help you feel more prepared and confident. Finally, create an alter ego for yourself who possesses the opposite of some stressful characteristics you want to be free of. Flesh out this alter ego and allow yourself to take on their perspective as your own when you're faced with a challenging or stressful situation. This has been Anxiety is the Enemy: 29 Techniques to Combat Overthinking, Stress, Panic, and Pressure. Written by Nick Trenton, narrated by Russell Newton. Copyright 2022 by Nick Trenton. Production copyright by Nick Trenton.